1,400 people searched these mountains. They never found a single trace. Not a shoe, not a thread, not one fragment of the bright red shirt he was wearing when he vanished. In this episode of Vanished, we investigate the Dennis Martin disappearance, a 1969 cold case that became one of the largest search operations in national park history. A 6-year-old boy, missing in mountains, swallowed by a national park disappearance that has haunted families and investigators for over half a century. Last episode, we examined how a severed finger mailed to a Florida family deepened the mystery surrounding Diane Augat. Today, we turn to a case where the Great Smoky Mountains missing child left behind nothing at all. And that silence is the loudest part of this story. Dennis Lloyd Martin was born on June 20th, 1962, in Knoxville, Tennessee. He was 6 years old in the summer of 1969, a small boy with a wide world ahead of him. Dennis was the younger son of William and Virginia Martin. His father, known as Bill, was an engineer in Knoxville. The Martins were an outdoors family. They loved the Smoky Mountains the way generations of East Tennessee families have. Not as tourists, but as regulars. The park was their backyard cathedral. Every summer meant camping trips, cookouts, long afternoons in the shade of ancient hemlocks. In June of 1969, the Martin family planned a Father's Day weekend outing. Bill Martin, his father Clyde, Dennis, and Dennis's older brother Douglas all headed into the backcountry. They were joined by another family, the Keys, who had children around the same ages. It was supposed to be an ordinary weekend, the kind of trip Dennis had taken before, the kind of trip thousands of families were taking that same weekend across America's national parks. Dennis Martin was a typical 6-year-old, energetic, curious, eager to keep up with the older children. He had no reason to be afraid of these woods. They were familiar. They were home. On Saturday, June 14, 1969, the families were camped near Spence Field, a high-elevation grassy bald along the Appalachian Trail in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. The elevation sits around 5,000 feet. The weather was clear. The afternoon was warm. The children, Dennis, Douglas, and the Key boys, were playing together in the open. Around 4:30 in the afternoon, the boys hatched a plan. They would sneak through the bushes and jump out to surprise the adults, a game of hide and seek. The older boys went one direction. Dennis, wearing his distinctive bright red shirt, went around the other side of the bushes alone. The other children emerged. Dennis did not. His father noticed within minutes. Bill Martin began calling Dennis's name. When there was no answer, other adults joined the search immediately. Within an hour, they alerted park rangers. By nightfall, the initial search was underway. The terrain was unforgiving. Spence Field sits in one of the most densely vegetated wildernesses in the eastern United States. Rhododendron thickets, locals call them laurel hells, can form walls so thick an adult cannot push through them. Ravines drop away sharply. Streams run cold and fast even in summer. A child Dennis's size could disappear into this landscape within seconds, and that, apparently, is exactly what happened. The search for Dennis Martin escalated faster than almost any missing child case in American history at that time. By Sunday, dozens of searchers were combing the area. By Monday, hundreds. According to documented accounts, at its peak, the operation involved approximately 1,400 searchers. The National Park Service coordinated with the FBI. The Tennessee National Guard deployed. Remarkably, Special Forces units, Green Berets, were brought in from Fort Bragg. Helicopters with thermal detection equipment scanned the forest. Tracking dogs were brought in from multiple agencies. According to reports, the dogs could not establish a consistent trail from the point where Dennis was last seen. The search covered thousands of acres of backcountry. Caves, sinkholes, streams, and cliff faces were all inspected. Nothing was found. No red shirt, no clothing, no remains. No physical evidence of any kind. Then there was the witness account. A man named Harold Key, the father of the family camping with the Martins, reportedly told investigators that around the time of Dennis's disappearance, he observed what he described as a rough-looking man in the woods. According to the account, this individual appeared to be carrying something. Investigators pursued this lead, but the identity of this individual was never confirmed, and the sighting was never corroborated by other witnesses. Even psychic Jean Dixon was consulted, a sign of how desperate the search had become. Her involvement produced no actionable leads. Without physical evidence, the investigation had almost nothing to build on. Investigators considered multiple possibilities. The first and most straightforward theory was that Dennis simply became lost. A disoriented 6-year-old in this terrain could fall into a ravine or sinkhole, succumb to exposure overnight, or become trapped in dense vegetation. But this theory carries a problem. Searchers covered the area extensively. Remains, even partial, are typically found eventually. In Dennis Martin's case, nothing was ever recovered. The second possibility involved a wild animal. Black bears are common in the Smokies. However, fatal bear attacks on humans in the park were extraordinarily rare, and a bear dragging a child away without leaving any trace, no blood, no torn clothing, strained credibility. The third theory was abduction. The witness sighting of an unidentified man carrying something lent this theory weight, but without corroboration, it remained unproven. Investigators reportedly looked at persons of interest, but no suspect was ever publicly identified or charged. Here is what we know. Dennis Martin was last seen at approximately 4:30 in the afternoon on June 14, 1969. He was wearing a red shirt. He walked behind a bush and was never seen again. Here is what we do not know. We do not know which direction he went. We do not know if another person was involved. We do not know if he is alive or dead, though after more than 55 years, the latter is presumed. The complete absence of physical evidence is what makes this case so deeply unsettling. Something should have been found. A shoe, a scrap of fabric, a bone fragment. The forest typically gives something back. One piece of investigative work could potentially change everything. A systematic re-examination of the original witness statements using modern analytical techniques. If the man seen in the woods was real, modern criminal databases and genealogical tools did not exist in 1969. They exist now. Dennis Martin's case remains officially open. His disappearance contributed to significant changes in how the National Park Service responds to missing persons, including faster deployment of search teams and improved coordination with federal agencies. His father, Bill Martin, searched for his son for decades. He never stopped asking questions. He never stopped believing someone might know what happened. Dennis Lloyd Martin was 6 years old. He disappeared into the mountains he loved, and those mountains have kept their silence ever since. Next time on Vanished, we investigate another case where the wilderness swallowed someone whole, and what searchers found years later raised more questions than answers. Subscribe. We investigate a new cold case multiple times a week.